right, for vehicle finance, to remind you. Okay, so leasing, I'm sure you've heard the term leasing, um, you know, on the radio, right? Lease for as low as, right? You hear that all the time. Does anybody in here know someone that has leased a vehicle? You know someone that has leased, or are you leasing currently maybe? Raise your hand. You have one. Are you leasing or do you know someone that's leasing? Jaden, yeah. You know someone. Yeah. So I'm assuming the way I'm talking is it's gonna be like most of you have no idea what's involved when it's a lease. Okay, so if you know some information that I'm talking about, I apologize, but I just designed it so that because I'm not assuming a lot of you are gonna go for it. Okay. Anyway, so I just have an ad here. This one was actually just before we went on summer break. I added that here, right? So there's a Santa Fe SUV for 85, right? Lease for 85 weekly, which doesn't that strike you as quite low, the payment, right? They make it so that it looks like a small payment. But if it's every 2 weeks, like you work, you get paid probably every 2 weeks, right? So 2 times 85 is what, 170? So it's probably 170 plus tax, probably 200 bucks every 2 weeks. So that's 400 bucks or more every month. It's still low for a brand new car though, okay? So we'll talk about why that is, okay? So it's similar to renting. I'm gonna have my highlighter ready to go. So if you underline or highlight, that's great. Similar to renting for a number of years. Watch this. You are paying for the depreciation and the use of the vehicle, right? And when I say use, I will say mileage. I know we're not doing miles, but we still call the kilometers you accumulate on a car, we call that mileage. So you should remember depreciation, meaning the car loses value every year, and you're gonna put on miles. These are the two components that they take into consideration when they rent it to you, they lease it. So they want to make sure, you know, when you go to a car lot and it's a used car and you're like, this is in pretty good shape. Most of the time, a lot of times it's a lease that has been returned. They made money with that lease and now they're going to sell it as well. So they're double dipping, right? So that's what they do. So you have the option to buy the car at the end of the lease, right? That's obviously there. But it's usually more costly than just buying it up front, okay? So some definitions, there's a down payment. Make sure you highlight that it's not taxed, right? The down payment is not taxed. The lease payment is the amount paid per month, of course. We're gonna go monthly here, okay? And this is taxed 12%. The lease payment is taxed, okay? The term of the lease is the years, right? You make payments, and there's a maturity date. Like we'll sometimes say, hey, the maturity date is 2 years, right, from now. So don't let that throw you off. There's something called the residual value, which we already talked about when we bought a new car. It's the depreciation, right? And it will be the cost to buy the car at the end of the lease. It's usually stated as a percentage, right? And this is also taxed 12%, the residual value, because that's how much is left. That's the value of the car at the end of the lease. It will be taxed if you want to buy it. They will give you either one of these. It's either they're going to mention residual value or guaranteed residual value. It is similar to residual value, but it is a fixed dollar amount, right? Example, the car you lease might be worth $30,000 new. When the lease is over, it will be worth $18,000. Therefore, $18,000 is referred to the guaranteed residual value. So they will tell you up front, when you bring this back, it'll be worth this much. If you want to buy it, this is how much you're going to have to pay for it, okay? So there's no surprises there. You can expect to pay this amount at the end of the lease in order to own it, right? Expect to pay at the end of the lease if you want to own it. You're essentially buying the vehicle you rented, right? Which a lot of people like. It's like, hey, I'm just going to rent it and see if I like this car, and then I'm going to buy it. Then I'm going to commit to buying it. Then there's something called the mileage cost. Most lease agreements, I would say all of them, have a limit. There's a limit on the amount of kilometers you can drive. It is usually stated as, right, example, 10,000 kilometers per year, let's say. So a 3-year lease would allow for 60,000, right? Wait a minute. My bad. If it's 10,000 kilometers per year, then a 3-year lease would allow for 30,000. My bad. Can you change that? Okay, it's 30, right? That's 3 times 10, 30,000. The lease agreement will state the cost per kilometers, right? So that's always keep that into account, and it becomes very expensive. So if you're a person that lives outside the city and you're driving to and from work every day, it might cost you a lot more than what you think at the end. Because when you return it, they look at the kilometers and you're like, wait a minute, you went over by 30,000. You're going to pay, right? So you got to watch out for that. If you're just in the city and you're just driving a little bit, you should be fine. Okay? All right. Formulas. Include in your study sheet. So if I had my study sheet up front here, I would now introduce a lease section, right? I would introduce that and just say, what are those? This is page 30. I would just make a spot on my study sheet to tell me where I'm going to get the formulas from, because you will not know them unless you memorize them, okay? This one is kind of going to be used when finding the mileage cost, so it goes hand in hand. But to figure out the kilometers past the limit, you go kilometers driven minus the allowance times the number of years. Okay, and we'll do this quite a bit when it's time to figure out how much they're going to cost you for charge you for the kilometers you went over. Mileage cost, I'm going to call it MC. I would strongly recommend you have both of them, because you might forget what that stands for down the road. So you go kilometers past limit times the rate per kilometer times 1.12 after tax, right? So the mileage is taxed, okay? That's where the 1.12 comes in. The total lease cost, so I'm just going to call this TL later in our notes. You take the down payment plus payment, add the taxes, multiply by the number of months. So if it's a 2-year lease, this would be 24. Plus the mileage charge, right, which you will have calculated ahead of time. Okay. So you kind of, if it's there, it's always only if it's there, you would tack it on to your total lease cost. So you take the down, I will kind of break this down, right? Down, total payments, and mileage charge. That's kind of how I want you to think of the 3 components there, okay? Do not tax this, okay? Not taxed. That's the #1 mistake that I see. And this is already taxed, right? So don't double tax if you multiply it by 1.12. Okay. Total cost including purchase. So this is total lease including purchase. You take your down payment, total payments, mileage, residual value. Okay? And the residual value is also taxed. Okay? Taxed, taxed, no tax. Okay. So the only thing that you never tax is your down payment. And again, will all of these components be there? Probably not. But if it is, then you just follow that. This is only if it mentions that you're going to purchase it at the end of the lease. Okay. All right. I'm just going to scan over this. If you want to be very prepared, you just read this before bedtime, right? You'll be knocked out in seconds, right? You'll start reading, it's like, right? It's a little boring, I get it. So additional info on leasing, right? It's an alternative to buying a new vehicle outright. And here it is. It's basically saying what I just did say. When the lease ends, right? I want you to highlight this. When the lease ends, you have 3 options. And these are the options here. You can return it. Just return it, walk away. Actually, you can't just walk away. They will do a thorough inspection. They will look for scratches, chips, wear and tear. Did you have a dog in there that tore up the place, right? Right? Does it smell funny? Are they going to need to replace all the carpets in there or clean them, right? Like, they will make sure you didn't abuse the vehicle, okay? Because they want to sell it. You can lease a new one. You can say, hey, I'm done with this Santa Fe. I want to try something else, right? I'm going to try a different car, and you can go with it. You can go Toyota Tundra or something bigger. Or you can purchase the vehicle at the end, right? Based on a guaranteed residual value that they promised you ahead of time. Now, is everything going to be exactly the way I tell you? Probably not. They change their strategies all the time. But basically, these are the 3 options you have. So if you want to lease forever, you can just always come back, return it, jump into a new lease, away you go. Always a new car. Next page. The following realities and responsibilities must be considered. Here it is. Customers responsible for maintenance, repairs, insurance, unreasonable wear and tear, extra kilometers, all of that. So oil changes you need to do. All of the fluid changes you need to take care of. Wiper blades, anything that goes, you need to replace that. Filters, cabin filters. Did you know that cars have a filter nowadays that filters the air coming into the cabin? Like the newer cars have that, so you need to make sure you replace that, right? Advantages of leasing. So we're just going to highlight a few things. Payments are less. They're lower. And why is that? Because you're only paying for the depreciation, right? You're not paying for the whole vehicle. You don't have to, here, without worrying about trade-in, without vicious negotiations. That's a little over, it's not always vicious, right? But you don't have to negotiate. It's like, no, I want more for my trade and give me more, right? I want less for the car. You're done with the lease, you just bring it back, right? So you just move on. When you lease new cars, always driving, relatively new, reliable, repair-free, and there's usually a warranty, right? Vehicles depreciate, lose value over time. And that one, I'm just going to leave it up to you. Usually people say buy something that appreciates in value, like real estate. But I mean, we all need a car. We can't get away from that, right? Disadvantages of leasing. There is a perpetual payment phenomenon. Perpetual means it keeps on going. So if you're into leasing, you're always going to have a payment. You're never going to get away from that, right? There's kilometer restrictions. Make sure that's a big disadvantage, right? Because you don't want to There will so belt lessees may want to exercise the buyback. The buyback amount may be too high. So buying it at the end may be higher than what the car should actually be sold for. Very difficult and expensive to get out of a lease. Difficult and expensive to get out of a lease before it expires. So it's almost like a cell phone contract, right? You all know that it's expensive to get out of it, right? And so same thing here. So most leases are 2 years, and then you're done, right? I'll leave it at that. Let's go over. I want to make sure I have enough time for the math, right? So page 32, there's this chart on leasing, advantages and disadvantages. I always like to have everything in one place. So I will just say leasing and put down here versus financing, because that's really what you're going to compare, right? Leasing, or should you finance the whole car? So lower monthly payment. Not financing the whole value. That's all I'm going to say. You're not financing the whole value. You're just paying for the depreciation portion. Okay. Always have a new car. You're always driving a new car. That's if you continue to lease, that is, right? Lower maintenance cost. The vehicle will have warranty and it's brand new. So yes, absolutely. When you're leasing, it's new and will have lower maintenance costs because it will be under warranty and it's just brand new components, right? It is safer. New cars have latest features. Okay, I'm just going to leave it at that. That's good enough for you to have something to go by. Just be ready to explain why that is, and that's when you do the reading part that I just gave you. Disadvantages: perpetual payments. Payments never stop. You cannot customize it. I would not even put stickers on it. Like, you can't do any of that because they're gonna say, hey, why is that sticker on there, right? It might have damaged something or it doesn't look good. You cannot put a muffler on it that makes a funny noise, right? You can't do anything, right? Bug deflectors, anything like that, you don't want to do that. You might have to drill. You don't want to do that, right? It cannot customize. And here's the one, mileage charge, right? Right, and I will explain this. You may have to pay additional mileage fees, right? You are restricted in terms of the amount of miles you can drive. It's almost a guarantee. I will leave it at that. And now let's do some math, okay? I need you to be able to explain sometimes why this is. So this is just a little bullet to get you started, and then you explain. Okay, page 33. Okay, so again, I have this many times in this booklet. MSRP stands for Manufacturer's Suggested Retail Price. So it's kind of like what we go by. It's like a baseline. It's like cell phones should be costing X amount of dollars when iPhones are released, but some companies may give you a deal and say, hey, we're going to give you, it's going to be less now, right? So a minivan sells with an MSRP of $28,500. I'm going to highlight that. And leases for $479 per month plus tax. So it's saying that it's already telling you you're going to have to tax it, right? So it's $479 plus any additional taxes. Because it varies from province to province. That's why they just have the $479 plus tax for a lease term of 24 months, 2 years, right? A down payment of $1,500 is required. The guaranteed residual value is 62% of the MSRP. So guaranteed residual value is 62% of the MSRP. So just a whole bunch of information. And you know we're in the leasing territory, so you don't have to worry about use private or use dealer or anything like that. You're now in the leasing territory, okay? So I have a lot of room here. Hopefully we'll get everything in there. It says A, calculate the total amount paid by the end of the lease. Total amount paid by the end of the lease. So this is saying TL. I believe I called it TL in your, yeah. So the total lease cost is TL. So total lease is down plus total payments plus any mileage charge that is possibly there, okay? In this case, they don't mention anything about kilometers, nothing. So this part is now gone. So we'll circle that and just scratch it, okay? They're not talking about mileage. So we have a down payment of $1,500 plus total payments is, if you go to page 30, I'm just going to show you that formula so you can follow. And then I'm coming back. It says down payment, and then this is the total payments here. Maybe let's write that down. Total payments on page 30. I'm just referring to, you're going to have to do this to figure out the total in payments you paid over the 2 years. Okay, so on page 30, that's what we do. Let's go back to page 33. So my payment is $479. I'm going to tax it. That's going to take care of the taxes, and it's over 24 months. You can do that all in one shot. That's okay to do that. Okay. And then we'll figure that out. I'll do that in steps. So 479 times 1.12. You can hit equal there if you want. That would be the payment plus tax, right? Times 24. So you will have paid $12,875. Yeah. 52. Somebody? Yeah, thank you. Hi there. She's not here today. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no problem. So that is the total lease. Does that include taxes? Yes, right? Because we tax the payment, and so it does include taxes. Do not go times 1.12 again, because then you're going to be taxing your down payment, and you will be double taxing your payments, right? So this is after tax. So just make sure you understand that. That's the total lease after tax over 2 years. B, calculate the total residual value of the minivan after tax. So we're going to do B here. And I'm just going to peek on the formulas if I can go off of that. The residual value is not on there, but I will just show you that. Residual value is going to be the MSRP times the 62%, right? And all of that is going to be multiplied by 1.12. Times 1.12 because it's taxed, right? So the MSRP is 28,500. We multiply that by 62%, and that will be taxed. So 28,500 times 0.62 times 1.12. That's 19,790.40 cents. So I'm going to underline this value because it's important. I mean, I guess this is answering B, so we'll just do that. This formula is not on page 30 because sometimes they will just give you a fixed amount, or you'll have to figure out what the residual value is. But you always add taxes, that's for sure. Okay. C, calculate the total cost of leasing and buying. So leasing and buying the car at the end of the lease. So we'll basically just go total lease and purchase. I think I call it TLP. So we have to go down plus total payments plus mileage plus residual value. All those components are to be added. So the down payment is 1,500. Total payments would be here, this part right here, 12,875.52 plus, there is no mileage charge, but there's the residual value. So some of you are saying, Mr. Dixon, couldn't I have just taken this and plugged it in here? Yes, absolutely. But I'm I want you to understand the components of the formula. That's very important to me. So let's add that all up. I'm keeping this on my screen, so I'm just going to add up this way. So that's 34,165.92. Just to illustrate something here, can you imagine if you would have paid for this car, right off the bat, just 28,500, and add taxes, how much would that be? 28,500 times 1.12. You would have only paid 31,920. If you lease and then buy, it's 34,000. So you're actually paying more overall, and this is actually pretty accurate. And as well as, this is not even including the fact that there could be a mileage charge. It could have charged you for going over the allowed kilometers, right? So it could have been even more expensive. Okay. By the way, they'll usually throw in deals. They'll say, hey, if you bring it back, we would have to charge you X, Y, Z, right? All these things that are wrong with it. But if you buy it, we will waive all of that, because they want to get rid of it, right? They don't want to be stuck with something that may need some repairs. So they're pretty crafty that way. Example 2. So this one includes mileage. So let's do that, and then you'll try 1 or 2 questions on your own. So leasing is complicated if you don't follow carefully. Okay. So Michelle is returning a Toyota Corolla. So she's returning it, right? She leased it for 3 years. The original purchase price was $24,000 before tax. Michelle paid $310 plus tax per month, and there was a down payment of $4,000. The guaranteed residual value stated that it's going to be $15,600 before tax. The lease agreement allows for 12,000 kilometers, right? She's allowed 12,000 per year with a charge of 15 cents per kilometers over the limit. The vehicle is returned with an odometer reading. That's basically where it says how many kilometers that car has. The odometer reads 41,200 kilometers. So a lot of information. We will not need it all at the same time, but highlight and underline if possible, okay? It says A, calculate the total mileage. They want total mileage after tax. Okay, so we'll do that. Kilometers over limit. Actually, yeah, let's do that. Kilometers over limit. You go allowance, which is 12,000 kilometers, times 3 years. And you're going to subtract the actual reading from it. So then you go 12 times 3, that's 36,000 that you were allowed, minus 41,200. And yes, you're going to get a negative, but we won't worry about that. We just see that the negative means, right, over by 5,200 kilometers. That's what that is saying if you get a negative. Okay. So charge is 5,200 kilometers. Multiply that by the 15 cents per kilometer. So it's 5,200 kilometers times 15 cents. That's $780 that you're going to have to pay before tax. So I'm going to add taxes to it by multiplying this times 1.12. That's $873.60. Make sure it's 60, not just 6. This is how much it is after tax. And again, if you don't do everything exactly the way I do it, that's fine, as long as you show me how you got that. So this is the mileage charge. Okay, so total mileage. That is the cost for going over. B, calculate the total cost of lease after tax. So I'm going to call this, I must have anger issues because I'm breaking my lead all the time. Or it's old already, I don't know. So total lease, I'm going to take my down payment, which is 4,000. I'm just following the formula on page 30. Plus my payment, and we'll add taxes to it. And how many months is 3 years? 36, right? This here gives you the total you made in payments, plus the mileage charge, yeah, 873.60. And so we go 4,000. I will do this in steps. So 310 times 1.12, that would be the payment after tax, 347.20, and you make 36 of those, so 12,499.20. This is the total payments including tax. 873, remember it's already taxed, so do not add one, don't go 1.12 here. So now I'm just going to add everything up. So that's 17,372.80. That's the total lease without purchasing it at the end. C, determine the cost to purchase the vehicle at the end after tax. Just the cost to purchase the vehicle. It's not lease and purchase. It's just the cost of purchase. So basically, I'm going to call this a residual value. In this case, they give you a fixed amount, which is 15,600, and we're just going to add taxes to it. That's all you need to do there if it's a fixed amount. So it's 17,472. That's it. Quite a bit of stuff, eh? So this one we're gonna have to practice for sure. If you could go to the next page with me. I just want you to read carefully and try to decipher what it is that needs to happen there. I want you to try example 4. Skip 3 for now. Just go to 4. Can you try to do this right now with what you've learned? Just this one question, because it's going to take you till the end of class. You have about 8 minutes. There are the answers if you want to quickly jot them down.